All right, happy holidays, everyone, and welcome into Game Time Unplugged. I'm Lee K. Howard, and this special edition, we're going to be talking about a variety of sports on the UK campus who have had big months of December. It has been a transitional year for the Kentucky volleyball team. Mark Pope and the basketball team trying to figure things out as they end the non-conference portion of the schedule strong. And there is a lot of change for the Kentucky football program. We're going to talk all about that over the next couple of minutes or so as we get set here for a new year. And this is, like I said, a holiday edition here of Game Time Unplugged on WKYT+. But let's dive right in and let's talk about the Kentucky basketball team, because we all know that they've had their ups and downs this season. Losses against Louisville, losses against Michigan State, Gonzaga, and then even the one at home against North Carolina. All tough matchups, but all games that Kentucky should have been in and could have won. But you look back at those non-conference losses, especially the Gonzaga one, and that was one they really took it on the chin there in Nashville and didn't have an answer at all in that game. And then you look at a game like North Carolina where Kentucky was probably the better team that night in Rupp Arena, but they just didn't play to their potential and went through a cold spell shooting of about 10 minutes without a field goal, and that's going to cost them that win there. But that being said, the Wildcats were able to bounce back and finish the non-conference portion of their schedule very strong. Got their first Power 4 win over Indiana there at Rupp Arena, and that was a huge win, I think, for several reasons. One, they needed a win over a Power 4 team, but also it was the return of a rivalry that me personally, growing up, loved the Kentucky-Indiana basketball game, that rivalry, and for that to be back and for Kentucky to get the win and the way they got that win, battling back from 7 points down at halftime to win in Rupp Arena. It was just a very good feel-good win and something that they needed to do before going on the road to face St. John's in the CBS Sports Classic. And then, of course, to me, to this point, the highlight of the non-conference portion of the schedule has been the St. John's game there in Atlanta. This was a big one. Of course, Rick Pitino and Mark Pope going head-to-head, coaching for the very first time. But we also got to see the healthy Cats, the healthiest they've been all season long. Malachi Marino, by the way, goodness sakes, he's been good as a freshman. But Jaden Quaintance, he stole the headlines. Otega Owe led him in scoring, by the way. But Jaden Quaintance making his debut as a Wildcat. And here are his first points in Kentucky Blue, battling back. And, he tore his ACL at Arizona State last year, a 9-month recovery. And he is back now in the lineup. Limited minutes right now, but that's because he's still trying to get in game shape. But the way that he played defensively, especially, you see him there, he is a difference maker when it comes to a player on defense in the game of college basketball. So looking forward to seeing what JQ can do in SEC play for the Wildcats. Now, you see Jasper Johnson hitting a shot there. He had to play some big minutes because Jalen Lowe left this game 8 seconds into him checking in the first half with another separated shoulder. And kudos to him for battling back and coming back in the second half and had 13 points and dished out a couple of assists. And he was another bright spot in that game for the Wildcats. And it does look like that shoulder injury is just going to be something that the coaching staff and Jalen are going to have to manage all season long. And, it may be a thing where it pops out during a game and they manage his pain and get him back in the game, because I do think it's something that he can play and manage and wait till the end of the season, but we'll just have to see. And guys like Otega Owe are going to have to step up and really play big if he does have to miss any more time. So after this game, though, against St. John's, then, of course, Kentucky came back and on December 23rd beat Bellarmine in Rupp Arena to finish off the non-conference portion of the schedule. And, of course, the big story in that game was the play of Cam Williams, who absolutely lit up the nets against that Bellarmine zone. 8 of 10 from three-point range, 26 points, a career high for Williams. And Mark Pope has been looking for that dead-eye shooter all season long. I think he thought Cam Williams was the guy he recruited from Tulane to be that guy. So it's good to see Cam kind of falling into his own and finding that groove, because if he can be a real threat on the outside going forward, that is going to be a huge weapon for this Wildcats team as they go into SEC play. And speaking of SEC play, that is what is next for the Wildcats as Kentucky opens conference play on the road January the 3rd down in Tuscaloosa against the 14th-ranked Alabama Crimson Tide. So big things looking forward, looking ahead. It does appear that the roster is as healthy as it's been all year, with JQ back or in the lineup, Jalen Lowe and Mo Diabate back coming off some injuries. And if this team can stay healthy, they're one of the deepest teams, if not the deepest team in the country. And so that can certainly bode well going forward. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, though, we're going to talk about the Kentucky volleyball team. What a year, what a season that team had, taking it a ride all the way to the national championship game. That's coming up on the other side of this break. You're watching Game Time Unplugged on WKYT+. And welcome back to Game Time Unplugged on WKYT Plus, this special holiday edition as we take a look back at some of the bigger moments in UK sports over the last couple of weeks. What a month of December it was. We talked about the basketball Cats, but how about that Kentucky volleyball team? No team had more success on the University of Kentucky campus than Craig Skinner's volleyball Cats, as they not only swept through the conference and won another SEC conference title, which seems to be, just the thing that they do. But they also made a run all the way to the national championship game. And I think not only for traditional volleyball fans who have followed this team for years, but I think this team in particular was able to capture the hearts and the minds of a lot of just fair volleyball fans as well. Of course, a lot of people got a chance to watch them play most of the NCAA tournament there in Memorial Coliseum, as Kentucky was the number 2 overall national seed and had the opportunity to host through the first 4 rounds, sweeping the first 4 rounds. This is the region final matchup here against Creighton, another very talented team, and Kentucky volleyball just showed their presence. And Brooklyn DeLay and Eva Hudson are obviously the stars of this group, but man, you hear the team talk, and 1 through 14, this was a deep, deep team, and that's one of the reasons why Craig Skinner and this team were able to have so much success. And another thing that always stood out to me that Craig would say when talking about this group is they had so many weapons and the ability to win matches in different ways, whether that be with their block or their serve or their offense or their defense. And that's kind of the makeup of a team that can make it all the way to a national championship game. And unfortunately, they came up just a little bit short in that championship game. They were swept by Texas A&M, a team that, my goodness, was playing hotter than any team in the country at the end of the season after going through 3 number 1 seeds to get to the championship game there. But takes nothing away from what Kentucky volleyball was able to do, and there's a bright future ahead. The good thing is the majority of that roster will return for next year. There will, of course, be some transitions and some transfers, and one that Craig Skinner has already brought in, Morgan Gatesy, I believe, from Notre Dame, a 6'5" outside hitter. She was a first-team All-ACC selection and an AVCA All-American honorable mention. Comes in, and she's probably the player that steps into that Eva Hudson role for next year. But what a year that Kentucky volleyball had, and a big future there for the volleyball Cats. All right, one more sport to get to, perhaps the one who has gone through the most transition in the last couple of weeks in the month of December, and that's, of course, the Kentucky football program. As after 13 seasons, Mitch Barnhart decided that it was time to move on from Mark Stoops, and what a tenure Stoops had for the Kentucky football program. Gave the program a lot of highs, a lot of big wins, and a lot of bowl games as well. But the last 2 seasons in particular, the program was headed in the wrong direction, and particularly the last 2 games against Vanderbilt and then Louisville, it became apparent that it was time for a change. So in comes a fresh, young voice to the football Cats, and that, of course, is Will Stein. The Louisville native played his football at the University of Louisville, but of course he's been the offensive coordinator at Oregon, and the Ducks run a fun style of offense, and this was at Stein's introductory press conference as he was introduced to the Big Blue Nation, and actually grew up a Kentucky fan, which I think is a big thing. Grew up watching the Wildcats in Commonwealth Stadium. His dad played for UK as well, so that's kind of where his UK fandom came as a kid. And he said all the right things at this press conference. He grew up watching this Kentucky program. He knows what it can do, and he really, truly believes he can build a winner for the Wildcats. And I think some of the reasons why that can happen is the style of offense, but really the style of football he plays. He even said on defense, he wants to take risks. This is not a bend, don't break type of coaching philosophy. He wants to, he even joked, I want to fake punt, and I want to run some trick plays. And those are some things that I think he's going to bring a brand of football that's not only going to be fun for the fans to watch, but a brand of football that's going to be fun for recruits and be enticing for guys to come play for Will Stein and the coaching staff that he's been putting together over the last couple of weeks. The schedule doesn't get any easier. It's not going to be easy now that they have a new coach. It's still the SEC, and it's now a 9-game SEC schedule, and that's already been released a couple of weeks ago. So it's going to be tough, but it will be very exciting to see what Will Stein and his coaching staff can do with this group as the transfer portal gets ready to open up here soon. And they'll of course be working very hard to retain some of the players that are on the current roster, and of course bring in new players that fit their style and fit their scheme going forward. One other quick mention before we get going, we're running close on time, but the Kentucky women's basketball program, don't want to leave them out. What Kenny Brooks and that group have been able to do, Tony Morgan, Clara Strack, Tiani Key, the list goes on and on and on. That group has been so much fun to watch. They are a top 15 team in the country, and big things ahead for the Kentucky women's basketball team as well. All right, thank you so much for joining us on this special holiday edition of Game Time Unplugged. We all hope that you've enjoyed the holidays, and we will see you right back here tomorrow night on WKYT+.